Welcome into Seahawks Today. I am your host, Will Ortner. We just got done finishing a full video on the NFC playoff picture and who the Seahawks needed to win, who the Seahawks needed to lose. And then we got breaking news from NFL insider Jordan Schultz that the Seahawks have made a signing at running back, signing Cam Akers to join the squad. Now, the 28-year-old running back probably turns into a depth piece for the Seahawks, probably moves into that RB3 role. We know that George Halani's been dealing with some injury issues, but Cam Akers is now on the Seahawks, and he is moving into an active roster role. Will we see him play against the Minnesota Vikings? Probably not, but it is important to note that the Seahawks clearly think they can get the most out of Cam Akers, and he can help propel them forward on this season-long run. Now, let's get into our normally scheduled video. All right, so on Sunday night, I gave you kind of an updated playoff picture of where the Seahawks were at that exact moment. Now that the Sunday night action and Monday night action has completely finished, I can give you a more up-to-date look at the playoff picture over in the NFC. So right now, as you look at the NFC as a whole, the Rams are the number one team in the conference, which, boo. Eagles, because of their loss to the Cowboys, fall to that 2 spot. Bears, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in the lead in the South because, well, someone has to win the South. Then your Seahawks are the number 1 wild card team, Packers number 2, 49ers number 3, Detroit just on the outside looking in, and then we'll get into Carolina and Dallas later on. But after looking at the NFC playoff picture, you know what teams are probably going to be in the playoffs when the Seahawks make it. What team scares you the most? Let me know down below in the comments. I think if I had to look at any team, unfortunately, it's those losers down south. Not San Francisco. The other losers down south. Now, we need to talk about who you want to root for this week. There's a game basically every single day throughout the Week 13 NFL slate that we need to be paying attention to, and we need to be pulling for a team in another division, in another conference, or just frankly, we need some of these top teams that are even with the Seahawks to fall down just a little bit. On Thanksgiving, when you are celebrating, having a good time, enjoying your merriment, make sure that you do root for the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs because we want the Packers and the Cowboys to lose. Now, as we look at the first matchup on the screen, Packers are not favored right now. They're on the road. They're going to take a Detroit Lions team that is, well, they're hungry and they're reeling. They're just outside of the playoff picture. You know that Dan Campbell's going to have his boys up and ready to go. They're going to want to fight, and they understand that they really need to win this game against the Packers because it's huge not just for seeding, but it's also huge for the NFC North division. Now, don't be shocked if you see Campbell go full Dan Campbell in this game. A lot of trick plays, a lot of crazy motions, moves, whatever they need to do because they need to beat the Packers. Now, a Packers loss is huge for the Seahawks because it gives you breathing room. Right now, the Packers are breathing down your neck. I understand that the Lions aren't that far back, but they are a little bit back of the Packers. So a loss from Green Bay means you can breathe a little bit easier for you. The other Thanksgiving Day matchup will be the Kansas City Chiefs against the Dallas Cowboys. Right now, the Chiefs are favored by 3 in that one, and it is important to note that while Dallas might not be immediately right behind you, a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs probably means that they are out of playoff contention. They're not completely out, but the way the NFC has been going, with how difficult it is up at the top, that probably ends the Cowboys' season there. And it'll all be more fun because I will have boots on the ground. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go home for Thanksgiving. I hope everyone else is able to be with their family members or loved ones, whoever you celebrate Thanksgiving with. And I hope that you have a great time at Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving from me to you. And I'm going to be spending my Thanksgiving the way I think a lot of football fans, including John Madden, would have loved me to celebrate that Thanksgiving that will be at Cowboy Stadium. Now, when you look at the NFC standings, I already kind of said this a little bit with Dallas, but right now they're in that 10 spot in the NFC. A loss is going to put them at 5, 6, and 1. I don't see them making up enough ground to get back into contention, whether it's Detroit or Green Bay, that wins that game in the early window of Thanksgiving. I think a loss for the Cowboys kind of eliminates them, and then the Seahawks really only have to worry about 9 other teams. Now, on Friday, we need to look at the matchup there, and I think we want the Chicago Bears to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, that might sound weird to you, because you're going to say, Will, the Chicago Bears are ahead of the Seahawks right now in the NFC playoff picture. But here's the thing. So are the Eagles. When we look at this matchup, the Eagles are heavily favored. Philadelphia has won a lot of really important football games lately. I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl last year, but the Eagles did a pretty darn good job in that one. Now, my reasoning for why I think the Bears winning is better for Seattle, I don't think the Bears are all that good. I think that they are a little bit beneficial of the schedule. They've come away with a lot of one-score victories. They feel a little bit like last year's Washington Commanders. They won a lot of really close games, and sometimes there are teams that the ball just seems to go their way. And so I think a Bears victory here is actually going to be better for the Seahawks in the long run, because I think that the Eagles are going to be a much tougher team to beat, so they might not have as many losses on their resume at the end of the year, where I think the Bears, they could lose to just about anybody. I mean, shoot, they lost to J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. So at any point they could fall. I think a Bears win is better. But why don't you let me know down below in the comments? Both teams are ahead of the Seahawks. A loss for either team actually does, in essence, help the Seahawks in some way. If you think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win that game, type Philly down below in the comment section. If you think it's the Bears, type that down below in the comment section as well. Now, we're going to dive into the early Sunday slate. And if you're a Seahawks fan, you want the Carolina Panthers and you want the Cleveland Browns to come up on top. Yep, that's right. We're talking about Shedeur Sanders on Seahawks today. Getting some SEO value. Shedeur Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, Shedeur Sanders. Here's why you want the Cleveland Browns to win this game. The 49ers have the tiebreaker over you right now. So if you end up tied with San Francisco would essentially leapfrog you. You do not want that to happen. Now, the 49ers are the favorite in this matchup. I don't see the Browns winning this game unless Myles Garrett decides to absolutely go off and get into the backfield, have a bunch of sacks. I mean, he's been doing it all season long. I don't know that I totally buy into what Shedeur Sanders has going on over there, but he's made a couple of decent plays and got some victories. So if the Browns can come away with a victory there, that's huge, not just for you in the division, but for you in the conference as well. We're going to dive into that Rams game and, of course, our game in just a moment. But before we do, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by PricePicks. It is the holiday season, the best time of year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It is all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right. PricePicks. New feature alert. PricePicks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. On PricePicks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose FlexPlay, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, PricePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. I have a 2-pick power play for this weekend's action. JSN, more on his receiving yards. Justin Jefferson, less on his receiving yards as well. Download the PricePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PricePicks. It's good to be right. All right, that other early slate game that you need the underdog to win is the Carolina Panthers hosting the Los Angeles Rams. Why do you need this to happen? Because the Panthers, while they are in that 9th spot in the NFC and a victory would get them a little bit closer to making the playoffs, they're more likely only going to have a chance to get into the playoffs if they win the division over the Buccaneers, which right now you might want the Buccaneers to actually win that division because of all of their injuries. That being said, they're going up against the Rams. And a Rams loss here would actually tie the Rams with the Seahawks. Now, because the Rams have that tiebreaker over Seattle, they would still obviously lead the NFC West But they would come back closer to the Seahawks, and it would make 1,000 times easier our lives if the Seahawks beat the Rams in Week 16. When it comes to that late Sunday window, we just got to focus on the Hawks, baby. That's all that matters. That's all we got to care about. Right now, Seahawks, at the time of recording, they're a double-digit favorite in this one, and you're taking on a Minnesota team that is struggling. And frankly, I think if you look at our Chat Sports Vikings channel, you'd understand that their season is kind of done. Well, don't let them breathe any more life into it. Go out, dominate, make it look the way that it should. It's your second of 3 games in a row that should be fairly easy. I think there's a chance you could say it's the second of 4 games in a row that should end up being pretty darn easy for you. Now, are you going to get the perfect results? And what do I mean by that? All the teams that you want to lose, and you win, of course. Probably not. I think everyone needs to mainly focus in on that Panthers-Rams game. But as long as the Seahawks win, everything else is going to be out in front of them. And it is going to be attainable for the Seahawks to accomplish all the goals that we want them to accomplish. Now, I do think it is important to say that there's a lot of good teams in the NFC. So just because the Seahawks win doesn't mean that one of those other teams has to lose as well, other than, I guess, those matchups where we have like the Bears and the Eagles playing against each other, or the Packers and the Lions, because you're going to get at least somewhat good news if the Lions were to lose or if the Bears were to lose, because life would get just a little bit easier. Not as good as it would have been in my plan of action, but just a little bit easier. Now I want to ask you guys this, because I still believe it. I still believe that the Seahawks can go out and win the division. Frankly, I still think there's a path, and I think there's a way that the Seahawks can win the entire NFC. But I want to know what you think. Let me know down below in the comments. Will the Seahawks win the NFC West? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It was a wonderful show. Like I said, I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving break. Spend it with your loved ones, and if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, tell someone that you love them, because I do think that is important at the end of the day. I'll be telling plenty of people that I love them, and unfortunately, I might be telling some Cowboy players that I don't love them so much when I'm rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs over them later on tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time.